Some people, even Neil deGrasse Tyson, believe that there are contradictions in the Bible and that they are very clear. He even goes through that he claims that the math is all wrong and the story can't be trusted. And I'm not quite convinced. I've done some fact checking and I think he's wrong. My name's Craig and this is Morningstar Quest, where we are delving into the Bible for you, one question at a time.
You're doing great. Craig, just take a deep breath. You've got this. Let's go again with that same enthusiasm. Your audience is going to love it.
I just did that about 4 times. Thanks. Okay.
No worries at all, Craig.
No, you're all good.
Let's do this.
All right. So Neil deGrasse Tyson, he is, well, I think he's a great scientist and I'm not saying he's not. So let's just get that out the way first, because he is a great scientist. I just don't think he's read the Bible. And look, it's okay to say you haven't read the Bible. I encourage it. But if you are going to claim something in the Bible, you do need to read it, I think. So what do you think of this? That Neil deGrasse Tyson says that there's something wrong with one of the things in the Bible.
It's definitely an interesting claim, Craig. If someone's going to challenge what the Bible says, they should definitely dive into the details. Let's unpack what Neil deGrasse Tyson might have missed and see if this supposed contradiction holds up under closer scrutiny.
All right, so there are 439 contradictions in the Bible, or supposed contradictions. And today, Neil deGrasse Tyson is having, I guess he's putting his 2 cents worth in with regards to this one. There's one contradiction here, but Neil, he brings up 2 more. So let's get into that. What was the volume of the molten sea in Solomon's temple? Can you just say what's Solomon's temple and what's the molten sea?
Absolutely. Solomon's temple was a grand temple built in Jerusalem, considered the center of worship for the Israelites. The molten sea was a massive bronze basin filled with water, used by the priests for ceremonial washing. It's a key part of the temple's furnishings, and its dimensions and volume are what we're looking at in this supposed contradiction.
All right, so let's have a look at the start of Neil's video here, and we'll just take it as we go.
There's a passage in the Bible where it describes the shape of King Solomon's pond outside of his residence, and it says it is round.
Okay, okay, this is clear why. This is not King Solomon's house pond.
The molten sea was part of the temple, not Solomon's house. Getting that context right is crucial because mixing up the locations changes everything. This is exactly why digging into the text matters.
And exactly, because we've got here 1 Kings, and I'll give you the readings in a sec. 1 Kings 7:23 describes the making of the molten sea. And the entire text from, I think, 6:1 from 1 Kings to 7:51 is focusing on the construction of the temple. Now, this is a temple of worship, not a residence. Then there is a brief discussion with Solomon's palace, but it's only a brief one, and then it goes back to the temple again.
Exactly. The text highlights that while the temple construction took about 7 years, Solomon's palace took nearly twice as long. This shows a clear distinction between the sacred purpose of the temple and the more personal, luxurious nature of Solomon's palace. Understanding that context makes it clear that the molten sea is part of the temple narrative, not pond at Solomon's house.
All right, let's get into so that's number 1. He's already started and it's already wrong. So let's get into the second bit.
On all sides, 30 cubits around, 10 cubits across. Well, if you divide those 2 numbers, you get 3.0. That is the Bible's attempt to give you the value of pi, the ratio of the circumference of a circle to the diameter. Well, that's the wrong answer. Pi has actually some decimal values there. There were places that wanted to legislate the value of pi.
All right, I think before we get into that second bit, let's just get into that first bit because Neil.
The biblical measurements were practical, not mathematical. They weren't intended as a precise value for pi, just a functional description of the molten sea. So, using that, to criticize the Bible's accuracy is a bit of a stretch.
Yes, and I would even go further to say, like, here we have the capacity and thickness. He made the sea of cast metal, circular in shape, measuring 10 cubits from rim to rim and 5 cubits high. It took a line of 30 cubits to measure around it. Now, both Kings and Chronicles say the exact same thing.
Exactly. Both accounts in Kings and Chronicles describe the same measurements. This consistency shows that the focus was on the practical construction, not a precise mathematical value. The emphasis is on craftsmanship and the grandeur of the temple, rather than exact geometry.
And before we answer this one from Neil, I will go through the third thing, which is it's actually the, hang on. It's this actual question. What was the volume of the molten sea in Solomon's temple? We've got 1 Kings 7:26 and 2 Chronicles 4:5. So if we go back, 26 and 4:5, we got here, it was a handbreadth in thickness and its rim was like the rim of a cup, like a lily blossom. It held 2,000 baths. Now the contradiction here is 2 Chronicles says exactly the same thing, but then it says 3,000 baths that it held. Now the problem here is, and this ties in with what Neil deGrasse Tyson is saying with regards to pi, he's right. If its circumference is 30 and the diameter is 10, I think that's right, then it would obviously be 3, and we all know pi is 3.14, etc. I agree with him. I totally agree. And to be quite honest, I think the Bible agrees with him, just that he doesn't know it because he hasn't read it in the original Hebrew. Now, this is the literal Hebrew translation. This isn't just the English translation that we have. This is a translation literally from the original Hebrew language. And we've got to put things in context. We can't put things in context in our modern day life with something back 2,000-3,000 years ago. You can't, because they don't know decimal points for a start. But the other side of things is the whole nature of writing, but also in the oral nature of trying to remember things. 30 and 10 are much easier to remember than some decimal points.
Exactly. In ancient times, measurements were often rounded for simplicity, especially in oral traditions. The focus was on conveying the grandeur and function of the temple furnishings, not providing mathematically precise calculations. So, the biblical text is not trying to define pi, it's giving a straightforward, memorable description that people of that time could easily understand.
And there's something else that just he is missing as well. So both of these, 1 Kings 7:26, 2 Chronicles 4:5, they both say exactly the same thing, except for one says 2,000 baths it's contained, and the other one says 3,000 baths it held. Now, for English, that might not change much, but in ancient Hebrew, 2,000 baths it contained, it could still hold 3,000, but they just put 2,000 in. And in the other one, it's talking about the maximum capacity, 3,000 baths it held. This is not a contradiction. This is something, and you can even see it in, and its thickness was the handbreadth, and its rim was like the work of a rim of a cup, flower of a lily. And just go through it briefly, Cosmo, just so I can get my head around this, that the circumference, or the circumference, that's not necessarily the outside, it's the inside rim of a cup.
Exactly. The text describes the rim as shaped like a lily blossom, which means the outer measurement might differ from the inner measurement. The circumference could refer to the outer edge, while the diameter might be measured inside. This subtlety in the description can easily lead to confusion if we're applying modern precision to an ancient text. It's a great reminder that context is everything.
And if you take that into account, does it fit the pi model of how big it would be.
Yes, when you consider the inner measurement and the thickness of the rim, the dimensions align more closely with the actual value of pi. The difference in measurements makes sense once you account for the ornamental design and the thickness of the basin. So, the biblical description can indeed fit a more precise model of pi.
And the thing is here is that it's not a contradiction, and that Neil deGrasse Tyson, even though, look, he's got his data and he's just going by that, but he doesn't know the Bible, and which is why I encourage everybody to read the Bible, because it's so important. And I know sometimes the Bible is hard to read, but it's important. And you won't know God, you won't know his story if you don't read the Bible. But there's one more thing here that I just want to get into.
Understanding the full context of the Bible helps clear up these misconceptions. It's not about the text being wrong, it's about understanding it within its historical and cultural context. So let's dive into that final detail.
All right, so let's get into this. This is just the finish of his video, and he gets it wrong again.
The diameter. Well, that's the wrong answer. Pi has actually some decimal values there. There were places that wanted to legislate the value of pi because of that value that had appeared in the Bible, legislated to be 3.0. These are people who don't understand mathematics in charge of legislation. Something's missing in the educational system when people do not know when they don't know something.
All right, the problem is here, he is saying people, plural, tried to legislate. Now, I think it's Indiana, I think it is, and just correct me on that, Cosmo, just say yes or no.
Yes, you're right. It was Indiana that famously attempted to legislate a value for pi in 1897. It wasn't multiple places, just this one well-known case. It's a great example of how misunderstanding something can lead to some strange decisions.
And the thing is here, this guy, whoever it was, who put it through the legislation, he was a bad mathematician. That's said, that is done. It was put into legislation, yes, but it was never put into law because a professor who actually was a good mathematician came along and said, this is stupid, and 3.14 is pi, you can't get around it. And so that it never got passed into law. And it was only one place, one person, and not all of this other stuff. Now, this is the other bit. People say, and there's a lot of social media stuff on this with all the memes and everything, this legislation, whatever, bad mathematician or whatever, he was doing it because in the Bible, this very calculation is 3. It's wrong. He didn't even tie anything in with the Bible. It's just in the modern day, today, we are putting those two together and go, oh, look, this is a funny thing. They're not even the same. So everybody's got this wrong, and the Bible just stands for itself because it doesn't need defending. The Bible is correct, and we can't go off misinformation.
When people do not know when they don't know something.
This is an easy one to debunk, but it's actually a fun one, and I want to do so many more. There was a place named, I think it's Beersheba, and 2 people say they named it, but only really one could. So what's the deal with that? So that's next week, and if you're interested in this, subscribe and click on one of those because we've got so many more. This is 52. Hey, I just realized this is 1 year in. Nice. Let's go do something awesome forgotten. I'll catch you in the next one.